Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening episode of Pursue. This is Pursue 19E, which is hemostasis and thrombosis, and we are streaming live from Apollo Clinicals Hospital, Kolkata. We have a very pertinent topic today: hereditary and acquired qualitative platelet disorder. And to speak on that, we have once again Dr. Sulagna Girish. She's an MBBS, MD from TNMC BYL Nair Medical College, Mumbai. She's also done a DNB. She's presently a junior consultant, Department of Pathology at the Apollo Multispeciality Hospital, Kolkata. She's an ex-assistant professor of Department of Pathology at the Grant Medical College and Sir J.J. Group of Hospitals. She's got multiple publications in national and international journals with special interest in automation in hematology, benign hematology, and coagulation disorder. Before I ask Dr. Sulagna to join to start, let me request all of you to keep your mic muted, your camera off, and please don't share your screen. With this, let me request Dr. Sulagna, ma'am, please share your
Yes,
screen and let's start.
oh,
Yeah, just share your PowerPoint.
so everything in position, sir. Should I start?
Yeah, you need to just remove, yeah, just remove that pop-up which is there.
Right,
Stop sharing pop-up. Just drag it out.
right.
Yeah, fine. Please start. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm really feeling happy to be back in this platform. Today, in next 1 hour, I'm going to talk about hereditary and acquired qualitative platelet disorders. So, few words about normal hemostasis. Normal hemostasis is maintained and controlled by mainly three components: basal wall, platelets, and plasma protein. It occurs in two stages: primary hemostasis and secondary hemostasis. So, what is primary hemostasis? It starts with vessel injury. So, at the site of vascular injury, the subendothelial surface get exposed, and this surface is highly thrombogenic. So when it get exposed, the platelet get adhered to the subendothelial surface with help of specific receptor. This is called known as a platelet adhesion. After adhesion, platelet get activated, and then it undergoes shape change. So after the shape change occur, platelet secrete certain type of granule which is stored in their cytoplasm, and this granule help in recruitment of and a further platelet and cause platelet aggregation. So thus by aggregation of platelet, primary hemostatic plug is formed. But this plug, which is known as a platelet plug or primary hemostatic plug, is unstable and temporary. So to give that plug stability, secondary hemostasis come in action. So secondary hemostasis starts with secretion of the tissue factor from the injured vessel wall, and finally it leads to formation of the polymer, fibrin polymer, and fibrin polymer along with aggregated platelet form the stable plug. So as we see, the platelet has its main role in the primary hemostasis for the formation of the platelet plug. It also also the platelet activation provide the catalytic negative charge surface for the assembly of the coagulation pathway, and it also deliver molecules for effective thrombus formation and wound healing and repair. So platelet has three main function in hemostasis. So next few important platelet membrane glycoproteins. So first I will talk about glycoprotein 1b, 9 and 5 complex. This is a transmembrane glycoprotein which is composed of 4 subunit: GP1b alpha, GP1b beta, GP5 and GP9. This all the GP1b alpha subunit bears the binding site of the von Willebrand factor, and this deficiency of this complex leads to Bernard-Soulier syndrome. Next important glycoprotein is glycoprotein 2b3a. It interacts with the fibrinogen and thus plays an important role in platelet aggregation and adhesion to the endothelial surface. Activation of this complex initiates the platelet aggregation and the formation of the primary platelet plug. So So in this picture, you can see this is GB1b 9 and 10 complex. So it binds with the von Willebrand factor, which finally bind with the subendothelial matrix. And this is GB glycoprotein 2b3a complex, which bind with the fibrinogen, and this fibrinogen forms bridge between the two adjacent platelet and form the platelet aggregate. So any abnormality in this complex called Granzman thrombasthenia, and abnormality in GP1b95 complex cause Werner-Solius syndrome, which I will discuss later. So another important glycoprotein is glycoprotein 1a 2a complex. This is the receptor for collagen type 1 and type 4. The interaction with collagen leads to stabilization of the platelet. So as I already discussed, the platelet has its main role in the primary hemostasis. So any type of abnormality of platelet cause defective primary hemostasis. So platelet abnormality can be of two types, quantitative type or qualitative type. In quantitative type, the platelet number are abnormally high or low. But in qualitative type, the platelet number is usually normal, but the platelet present that are dysfunctional. So platelet function disorder qualitative type is a group of bleeding disorder in which platelet do not function properly, leading to bleeding in the absence of thrombocytopenia and von Willebrand disease. So platelet function disorder doesn't have thrombocytopenia, but Werner-Solius syndrome can present with thrombocytopenia, which I will discuss later. But generally, there is absence of thrombocytopenia, and but there is increased bleeding time due to platelet function disorder. So it present with mucocutaneous bleeding and excessive bruising with the adequate platelet count, normal PT and APTT, and normal screening test for von Willebrand disease. The disorder can be inherited or acquired. Here is the list of inherited type of qualitative platelet disorder, which is again divided according to the type of abnormality that are found in platelet function. So first in the abnormality in the platelet adhesion. So any abnormality in the glycoprotein, which I already discussed, GB1b59 complex, GB2b3a or 1a 2a or GB6 and 4 can cause abnormality in platelet adhesion leading to a platelet function disorder. Next is abnormality of the platelet receptor for soluble agonist. So receptor abnormality can found in the thromboxane A2 receptor, A2 adrenergic receptor or P2Y12 receptor, which is a receptor for ADP. Next is abnormality of the platelet granules. So platelet actually contain three type of granule: dense granule, alpha granule, and lysosomal granule. So dense granule, when there is abnormality in the D granules, this is called D type of platelet granule deficiency or storage pool deficiency. When there is abnormality in the alpha granule, this is called Gay platelet syndrome or alpha type of storage pool deficiency. And when the abnormality present in both alpha and delta granule, it is known as the alpha dense storage pool deficiency. Next is abnormality of membrane phospholipid. Next, abnormality of the signal transduction pathway. Several signal transduction pathway are involved, starting from the addition of the platelet to secretion to platelet aggregation. So any abnormality in the signal transduction pathway can also lead to platelet function disorder. Examples are abnormality in the arachidonic thromboxane A2 pathway, and other are less important. Today we will discuss only about thromboxane A2 pathway and some miscellaneous abnormality. So what are the clinical presentation? Patient usually present with mucocutaneous bleeding, which is mild in nature, but the severity can be variable. Generally, the bleeding is provoked. Rarely, the bleeding is spontaneous. The family history may be present. So what are the screening? What are the laboratory tests we can do to detect a platelet function disorder? First, I will talk about the screening test. What are the screening tests we do to detect a platelet function disorder? First is platelet count, mean platelet volume, and platelet distribution width. So it is done by a automated cell counter. Platelet count is done to detect any associated thrombocytopenia. Smear morphology in PBS can show the platelet morphology. Platelet can be small, large, or giant. Bleeding time, platelet function analyzer 100, PFA 100 to measure the closure time, and coagulation study, PT, APTT, TT, and fibrinogen again to detect any associated coagulation defect. So this is the figure showing normal platelet. This is purple magenta in color. and 2 to 3 micron in size normally. And this is, you can see this, the size is far smaller than the normal RBC. So this is normal platelet. Next is giant platelet. Giant platelet is usually equals or more than the size of a normal RBC. This is the giant platelet. We can see giant platelet in myeloproliferative syndrome, MDS, or Bundle-Solier syndrome. What are the large platelet? What when we call a large platelet? When the size of a platelet is less than a size of a RBC, but it is more than a one third of a RBC, found in May-Glynn anomaly, gray platelet syndrome. Degranulated, which shows less granule, and gray color platelets are seen in the gray platelet syndrome. I will discuss in detail. Small platelets are found in the Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome. These are the small platelet you can see here. So, bleeding time is the primary screening for platelet dysfunction. It was the only test that directly measured platelet function within the body. The bleeding time, but the test, the time, bleeding time is not sensitive or specific and does not necessarily reflect the risk of, or severity of the surgical bleeding. It is poorly reproducible and can be affected by aspirin use and by the skill of a person performing the test. So, because of its low sensitivity and specificity, this is rarely done in day-to-day practice these days. Next is closure time assay. The test measures the time required for a platelet in a sample of blood to plug a small hole in a tiny tube. So, when a when a platelet rich plasma is run over a tube, so there is tiny hole are made in the tube, and the time taken to close the hole are known as a closure time. So closure time is again indicate lower platelet is prolonged in lower platelet function, but do not identify the cause. That means the closure time assay is also have low specificity and sensitivity. The test may be abnormal if the platelet count is low, or if the protein needed for the platelet function are reduced, or if any antiplatelet medication are used. It will not detect all platelet function disorder, particularly in the minor forms. So again, this test is also have low specificity and sensitivity. Further testing would need to be performed in order to identify the exact cause of any abnormal result. Next is the viscoelastometry. Blood clots have to be strong to stop bleeding and prevent new bleeding until healing can occur. So by this test, we can determine the strength of a blood clot that is formed. So these are the screening tests. All of these tests actually have low specificity and sensitivity, and we do the screening test only to have a guide about what kind of abnormality we are dealing with, any qualitative or quantitative abnormality. So any platelet function disorder will show abnormal screening test like BT and closure time assay. So next is the specific test. It is again we can do various kind of specific test like platelet adhesion study, aggregation study by aggregometry, fluid cytometric detection of glycoproteins, platelet count ratio, and test for platelet secretion and release action. So specific tests are done further to classify the type of platelet function disorder. Platelet adhesion study, the whole blood is made to pass over a foreign surface and the reduction of platelet count is estimated. If a normal platelet is present in the blood, with the platelet will adhere with the surface and the platelet count will be low. So the platelet counts is done before and after the blood is before and after the passage of blood through the column. So in case of defective platelet adhesion, the retention will be less, but this test again is non-specific. So this is the main study we do to detect the type of platelet function disorder known as a platelet aggregometry. Many different substances can activate a platelet, including proteins in the wound, platelet released from other activated platelet, factors released from the other activated platelets, and factor produced by the coagulation system that aids the platelet to form a strong plug to stop bleeding. So many different platelet abnormalities we can detect by platelet aggregometry. It consists of 4 to 8 separate tests. In each test, a different platelet aggregating substance, also known as agonist, is added to the blood, followed by measurement of platelet aggregation over several minutes. When complete, the entire panel of tests is reviewed and interpreted to determine if there is any evidence of abnormal platelet function. So this is the light transmission platelet aggregometry study, where light is passed through a tube which has platelet rich plasma. So when the light is passed through the tube, the platelet absorb the light and there is less transmission of light. When an agonist is added, the presence of agonist causes shape change of the platelet and also the platelet aggregates. In presence of aggregate platelet, the light absorbed is less, also there is a high transmission of light. So the difference in light transmission is detected by the photocell and represented graphically. So various kind of agonist we use, like ADP, epinephrine, arachidonic acid, or collagen. So only with ADP and epinephrine we can see a biphasic wave curve, which is composed of both primary and secondary waves. So ADP and epinephrine can show a biphasic curve consisting of both primary and secondary wave. Other agonists like collagen, arachidonic acid, or ristostatin produce only a monophasic curve composed of only primary wave. So this is the interpretation. So we can differentiate between different platelet function disorder like Werner-Solier, von Willebrand, Glanzmann thrombasthenia, storage pool disorder by doing a platelet aggregatometry study. So in Werner-Solier syndrome, you can see the platelet aggregation in presence of ADP, epinephrine, arachidonic acid, and collagen is normal, but it is deficient or abnormal in presence of ristostatin. The von Willebrand disease show same kind of interpretation. The Glanzmann thrombasthenia show deficit or abnormal platelet aggregation in presence of ADP, epinephrine, arachidonic acid, and collagen, but it has normal aggregation in presence of ristostatin. Storage pool disorder, they show normal primary wave in presence of ADP and epinephrine, but absence of secondary wave. This is a better interpretation. So platelet aggregation response to ADP, collagen, and ristostatin. So three kind of result we can see. So first is absent platelet primary aggregation, but normal with ristostatin we can found with the in Glanzmann thrombasthenia, which is GP2B3A deficiency. It is confirmed by the flow cytometry study. So absent primary aggregation with ADP, collagen, arachidonic acid, but normal with ristostatin can seen in the Glanzmann thrombasthenia. Normal aggregation with ADP, collagen, but flat curve with ristostatin we can see in two conditions, von Willebrand disease and Werner-Solier. So you can see the Werner-Solier and von Willebrand disease can present with same test result. So how can we differentiate between two diseases? By doing a von Willebrand factor assay. So in case of von Willebrand disease, the factor will be low and it will get corrected by the cryoprecipitate. But in case of Werner-Solier syndrome, the von Willebrand factor level is normal, and the Werner-Solier syndrome, the confirmative diagnosis is by doing flow cytometry by detecting any abnormality in the glycoprotein 1B complex. Another test result we can found there where there is no secondary aggregation in presence of ADP and collagen, but normal with ristostatin. So this can be found in again two conditions. One is storage pool disease, another is cyclooxygenase deficiency or aspirin intake, which is drug intake. So in both cases, again to differentiate between two, we have to see the aggregation response to arachidonic acid. If the response is abnormal, we can call it a cyclooxygenase deficiency or a aspirin intake. If the aggregation response to arachidonic acid is normal, then it is due to storage pool disease. So by doing aggregatometry study, we can easily differentiate between different important platelet function disorders. So it is a very important study for platelet function disorder. Platelet aggregation testing is the gold standard in platelet function testing and can diagnose a variety of inherited and acquired platelet function disorder. It is typically performed at academic medical center or large hospital due to its complexity of the testing and interpretation. Next is flow cytometry. Platelet can be evaluated for functional defect using flow cytometry. This test uses laser to determine protein that are present on the platelet surface and how they change when the platelet is activated. So any deficit in the protein, the platelet flow cytometry can detect. Platelet flow cytometry is highly specialized procedure to diagnose inherited platelet function disorder. Next is platelet count ratio. The number of platelets are measured in an initial sample. The substrate is added to the sample to activate the platelet, which is agonist, are added to the sample and cause them to aggregate. The number of platelet is measured again. Only those that have not aggregated will be counted on the second time. So the difference between the first count and the second count can indicate a platelet dysfunction. Now coming to the important disorder, inherited disorder associated with the platelet function disorder. So first, the disorder of platelet addition, which is Werner-Solier syndrome. It was first recognized in 1948 by two French hematologists, Jean Bernard and Jean-Pierre Solier. They described a patient from a consanguineous family presented with severe bleeding episode, thrombocytopenia, and very large platelet. So the Werner-Solier syndrome is characterized by unusually large platelet, low platelet count. So Werner-Solier syndrome actually can present with the thrombocytopenia, unlike other platelet function disorder, and prolonged bleeding time disproportionate to the thrombocytopenia. So it is an autosomal recessive mode of inheritance. Autosomal dominant inheritance also seen. Prevalence is 1 in a million people. Heterozygous carriers are usually asymptomatic or show mild bleeding tendencies. Affected homozygous individuals tend to bleed excessively and bruise easily. So what is the pathophysiology of Werner-Solier syndrome? It affects the ability of the platelet in the circulating blood to bind with a damaged blood vessel. Hence, the blood clotting is hampered. So as I told you earlier, the platelet membrane contains specific glycoproteins which main function is in platelet addition, activation and aggregation. So in Werner-Solier syndrome, there is missing in the glycoprotein 1b, 9 and 5 complex, also known as glycoprotein 1b complex. Normally, the glycoprotein 1b complex sticks out of the platelet surface and binds with the von Willebrand factor, which in turn bind with the vessel wall. So here, this is the platelet. This is the glycoprotein 1b complex. This is the von Willebrand factor. The glycoprotein 1b complex bind with the von Willebrand factor, which in turn bind with the subendothelium. So in case of Werner-Solier syndrome, the absence of glycoprotein 1b complex made platelet non-adherence to the subendothelium, leading to abnormality in the clot formation. If one of these proteins is missing or abnormal, they cannot bind directly to the subendothelium, thus hampering clotting process and excessive bleeding result. The glycoprotein 1b complex is composed of 4 protein subunits that bind closely together. Any mutation in one of the glycoprotein complex gene can cause Werner-Solier syndrome. So far, mutations have been identified in glycoprotein 1b alpha, 1b beta, and glycoprotein 9, but no mutation has been found in glycoprotein 5. Missense, nonsense, and deletion mutation are identified. The variety of mutation is most likely responsible for the heterogeneity of the Werner-Solier syndrome. So what is the clinical presentation? It affects male and female in equal numbers. The symptom of Werner-Solier syndrome, which are typically apparent at birth and can continue throughout the life. Heterozygous individuals show milder form of bleeding. Homozygous or double heterozygous bleed excessively from cuts or other injuries. Epistaxis, ecchymosis, GI bleeding, or any unusual heavy menstrual flow are seen in women. Rarely, patient will have severe hemorrhage during surgery or injury. Severity of bleeding is variable among patients and may range from mild to life-threatening. Visual bleeding and hematosis has also been reported. So, what are the laboratory findings? First is a thrombocytopenia. Thrombocytopenia in Werner-Solier syndrome is variable. It can present with less than 20,000 platelet to normal count. But the thrombocytopenia is usually mild to moderate type. Microscopic examination to determine the presence of abnormally large platelet and irregularly shaped platelet. So more than 1/3 of the platelet are at least the half of the size of a RBC, and some platelet are as large as the lymphocyte. So they on microscopic examination you can see large platelet in Werner-Solier syndrome. Flow cytometry study to measure the level of expression of the missing protein of platelets is the gold standard for confirmative diagnosis. Again, thrombocytopenia is variable, less than 20,000 to normal. Reading time may range from marginal to markedly prolonged. Peripheral smear reveal large platelet. Bone marrow study shows adequate number of megakaryocytes with normal morphology. Platelet function analyzer 100 may be useful in diagnosis but with low sensitivity. Platelet aggregometry study and flow cytometry study is needed for the confirmation. So what will platelet aggregometry study reveal? This study will reveal there is failure to aggregate with ristocetin and slow response with low dose of thrombin but normal aggregation with epinephrine, ADP, collagen and arachidonic acid. This failure to aggregate with ristocetin cannot be corrected by adding normal plasma, but in case of von Willebrand disease, it gets corrected after adding normal plasma. This is the difference between von Willebrand disease and Bardet-Solier. By this way, you can differentiate between two disease as they can show similar result on platelet aggregometry study. Flow cytometry study confirmed the defect in the GP1b95 complex by using antibody directed against platelet surface antigen CD42B, revealing a severe reduction or deficiency in GP1b complex. Other platelet surface antigen like CD41 and CD61 are normal. So this is all about Bardet-Solier syndrome. Next, similar kind of presentation can also occur with platelet type of von Willebrand disease. So in this type of von Willebrand disease, there is the large von Willebrand factor multimer show inappropriately increased affinity towards platelet, leading to reduced level of von Willebrand factor multimer, reduced level of von Willebrand factor and platelets in the plasma. So there is increased affinity of large von Willebrand factor multimers that leads to decreased level of von Willebrand factor and platelet in the plasma. So any abnormality associated with the von Willebrand factor is known as a type 2b von Willebrand disease, and when the abnormality is associated with the platelet membrane glycoprotein complex, which is GB1b9 complex, this is called as a platelet type or pseudo von Willebrand disease. This is the autosomal dominant and inheritance. Mild to moderate type of bleeding is seen. Laboratory findings are similar to the type 2b von Willebrand disease. So any child present with inherited platelet function disorder with thrombocytopenia, we have to consider this entity also, platelet type or pseudo von Willebrand disease. So next is disorder of platelet signaling transduction. After addition to the subendothelium, platelets get activated and release substance stored in their granules. Several signaling mechanisms are involved in the process, starting from platelet adhesion to secretion and finally aggregation. So any specific abnormality in the platelet signaling mechanism can cause platelet dysfunction. This defines a group of heterogeneous abnormalities in a platelet secretion and signal transduction. Cases of G protein abnormality and also abnormality of the different receptor for platelet agonist has been reported. The most important in the platelet signal transaction is the defective thromboxane synthesis. Thromboxane is synthesized from arachidonic acid, normally stimulate the secretion from the dense and alpha granules, leading to platelet aggregation. It is the most important factor for platelet aggregation. Any enzyme deficiency in the arachidonic acid metabolism can impair release of granule contents from the platelet, leading to deficient platelet aggregation. Congenital absence of enzymes are extremely rare. Ingestion of aspirin inhibits cyclooxygenase and induce a similar effect. So drug aspirin NSAID can inhibit cyclooxygenase and induce a similar effect, which is defective thromboxane synthesis effect. Platelet have a milder bleeding disorder. BT is prolonged. Primary wave is normal, but the secondary wave is abnormal with ADP and epinephrine. Deficient aggregation with collagen and arachidonic acid. So next important thing is the disorder of platelet aggregation. First few words about what are the primary aggregating. There are two types of aggregating substance known as primary aggregating and secondary aggregating. Primary aggregating substance like ADP and epinephrine directly can induce platelet aggregation independently of their ability to release intraplatelet ADP or to induce production of the prostaglandin. So they can directly induce platelet release, which is independent of release of intraplatelet ADP. And secondary aggregating substance induce platelet aggregation through their ability to provoke the release reaction of ADP or synthesis of epinephrine, which are collagen, arachidonic acid, and thromboxane A2. So primary aggregating substance, actually ADP and epinephrine, in aggregometer study, they produce biphasic curve composing of both primary and secondary wave. And in this secondary aggregating substance can produce only a monophasic curve consisting of only primary wave. So disorder of platelet aggregation, also known as the Glanzmann thrombasthenia, it is a rare inherited platelet function disorder characterized by impaired primary aggregation of platelet due to defective 2B3A receptor. The abnormality prevents platelet to form a platelet plug. The symptoms usually begin at birth or shortly thereafter and include the tendency to bruise and bleed easily and sometimes profusely, especially after surgical procedure. Symptoms may include susceptibility to easy bruising, epistaxis, bleeding from the gums, intermittent gastrointestinal bleeding, or purpura. Women with Glanzmann thrombasthenia often have unusually heavy menstrual bleeding, irregular uterine bleeding, and excess bleeding in childbirth. Internal bleeding and hematuria can also occur. The severity of the symptoms varies greatly. Some affected individuals have mild bruising and others may present with severe hemorrhages that can be life-threatening. So it is autosomal recessive pattern of inheritance. The abnormality is either in the gene for glycoprotein 2b, also known as ITGA2b, or the gene for glycoprotein 3a, also known as ITGB3. So genes for both of these protein are present in the chromosome 17. Different genetic mutation of either these two genes result in the heterogeneity of the thrombasthenia phenotype. It affects male and female in equal number. So this deficiency is variable and it is classified in 3 types based on the presence or absence of the factor 2b3a complex. So type 1a is the absence of 2b3a complex, which is less than 5% of the normal. Type 2 is the reduction of 2b3a complex. Type 3 is the presence of 2b3a complex but dysfunctional. So they cannot bind with the fibrinogen. So there are the 3 types of deficiency we can see in the Glanzmann thrombasthenia. So what is the pathophysiology? Normally on activation of platelet, GB2B3A receptor become exposed on platelet surface and serve as a binding site for the fibrinogen. So this is the GB2B3A which bind to the fibrinogen. This fibrinogen forms bridge between two adjacent platelets, thus platelet aggregation occur. The fibrinogen molecule form bridges between adjacent platelets, resulting in platelet aggregation. In this condition, the absence of fibrinogen binding due to lack of receptor is responsible for the deficit aggregation. So here there is a deficiency in platelet aggregation leading to platelet function disorder. So what we can see on peripheral smear, the platelet is small and decreased. You cannot see any lump as there is deficit in platelet aggregation. So platelet will be small and discrete. Platelet count is normal, PT is prolonged, cord retraction is abnormal, platelet aggregation is absent with ADP, epinephrine, collagen and arachidonic acid but normal with ristocetin. So this findings is exactly opposite to the finding what we see in Werner-Solier syndrome, where there is platelet aggregation is normal with ADP, epinephrine and collagen but deficit with a ristocetin. Confirmatory diagnosis is done by using monoclonal antibody and flow cytometry. No specific treatment is available. Severe cases can be managed by platelet transfusion. Coming to the disorder in secondary aggregation. So storage pool disease is the name given to several rare disorders in which the platelet granules are affected. SPD shows defect in secondary aggregation. It is more frequent than the primary aggregating disorder, which is Glanzmann thrombasthenia. So they are more frequent and more common than the primary aggregating disorder. Granules are storage spaces inside each platelet. So we can see 3 type of granule present in the platelet: dense granule, alpha granule and liposomal granule. Dense granule contains serotonin, histamine, ADP, ATP. Alpha granule contains albumin, fibrinogen, fibronectin, von Willebrand factor and von Willebrand factor antigen. So granules are the storage spaces inside each platelet. During the process of making a platelet plug, the platelet changes its shape, and after the shape change occurs, the chemical inside the granule are pushed into the bloodstream. This process is known as the secretion. So in case of secondary aggregation disorder, which is known as a storage pool disease, the granules cannot empty in the bloodstream, leading to deficient platelet secretion. This chemical from the granules signal other platelet to come and help. The chemical allows the next step in forming platelet plug, and then aggregation happen. In storage pool disease, there may not be enough of a certain type of granule, both alpha and delta granule, and the granule may be abnormal, or there may not be enough of the chemical is supposed to hold. So either of these condition can cause storage pool disorder. So this is again of three types. Any abnormality of alpha granule, known as the alpha granule SPD, also known as the gray platelet syndrome. Any abnormality in the dense granule, known as the dense granule SPD. And when both alpha and dense granule are deficient or abnormal, this is known as the alpha and dense granule SPD. It is very rare. When platelets are not able to store chemicals or secrete them when needed, they cannot let other platelet to know, so other platelet come and help to form a plug. So it takes longer for a clot to form. SPD usually result in mild to moderate bleeding. Bleeding lasts longer than normal, but the body is usually able to make it stop. People with SPD rarely require treatment except when they are having surgery or have serious injury. So testing for storage pool disease, the platelet count may be normal or below normal. Looking at the microscope under electron microscopy can show there is few or no granules. So in alpha SPD, you can see no alpha granules in platelet, and in dense SPD, you can see no dense granule within the platelet. It is done by the electron microscopy study. With alpha SPD, the platelet look large, degranulated, and gray color. That's why it's known as a gray platelet syndrome. The bleeding time is sometimes longer than normal. Platelet aggregation tests are abnormal with different agonists. People with SPD may respond to desmopressin. Transfusion with donated platelets may be needed for severe bleeding. So alpha granule SPD, also known as the gray platelet syndrome, where alpha granules are affected. It is rare in occurrence. Alpha granules and their contents are absent or diminished, and platelet in alpha SPD look gray and degranulated when viewed under microscope. Hence this name. Mild bleeding diathesis occur. Mild thrombocytopenia noted. On microscopy, large pale gray color platelets are noted. Sorry. Platelet aggregation is defective. Reticulin fiber are increased in bone marrow. So this is the platelets in gray platelet syndrome. You can see they are pale looking, degranulated without and gray color. So this is known as the gray platelet syndrome. Dense granules SPD, most common type of hereditary platelet function disorder. Mild mucocutaneous bleeding noted. Electron microscopy reveals absence of dense granules. Platelet aggregation study with epinephrine and ADP shows intact primary wave but no secondary wave. So with storage pool disease, both with alpha and dense granule SPD, we can see the primary wave is intact but the absence of secondary wave when study is done with the epinephrine and ADP. Ristocetin induced aggregation is normal but defective with collagen. Dense granule SPD occur as a sole abnormality or in association with other congenital disorder like Wiskott-Aldrich, Chediak-Higashi syndrome, or Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. Bleeding episode are managed with platelet concentrate. Now, few words about the congenital disorder associated with the dense type of SPD. First is the Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome. It is an X-linked disorder characterized by the clinical triad of microthrombocytopenia, eczema, and recurrent infection. When a child has a Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome, the T cell and B cell are there, but they do not function properly. So, there is repeated recurrent and severe infection occur. In WAS, the child body does not properly produce platelet, and when the platelets are produced, these are small in size and dysfunctional. So, without healthy platelets, the child is likely to experience frequent and hard to control bleeding, even from the mildest bumps and scrapes. Next is the Chediak-Higashi syndrome. It is a rare inherited complex immune disorder that usually occurs in childhood. It is characterized by the oculocutaneous albinism, immunodeficiency with an increased susceptibility to infection and a tendency to bruise and bleed easily. Neurological deficits are also common. Chediak-Higashi transmitted as a autosomal recessive pattern. The responsible gene are mapped to the chromosome locus 1q and is also known as the LOIST gene. The children with this disorder have abnormally low level of white blood cell, and platelet numbers are usually normal, but the platelets cannot function properly. Easy bruising or prolonged bleeding, epistaxis, spontaneous mucosal or soft tissue bleeding can be seen. White blood cell contain abnormal granule which are markedly enlarged, and we can see the granule in normal microscopy study. So this is a neutrophil found in the Chediak-Higashi syndrome. You can see abnormally large granule within a neutrophil. This granule can be seen by looking at the blood cell under the microscope. The infection are usually fatal during infancy and early childhood, but they can live up to second or third decade. Next is Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome. It is a rare inherited disorder characterized by reduced skin hair or eye pigmentation, which is also known as albinism, abnormal platelet function, and the excessive storage of fatty substance, also known as steroid, in various parts of the body. Fatty deposit is deposited in the lungs, intestine, heart, or kidney and may cause impaired organ function. Pulmonary fibrosis and IBD is common. It affects male and female in equal number. Hermansky-Pudlak result from abnormal formation of intracellular vesicles due to mutation in genes encode protein operative in the formation of lysosomal vesicles. So, total 10 genes have been found which are responsible for this disorder. It is inherited as autosomal recessive genetic pattern. Frequently, the first symptom of Hermansky-Pudlak syndrome is in a child include easy bruising, bleeding gums, nosebleed, excessive bleeding after injury or surgery. Platelet in HPS don't contain dense granule, leading to a dysfunctional platelet. Women may experience menorrhagia, bleeding may become life-threatening, and aspirins make the bleeding worse. So, with this, I finish with all the inherited disorder, platelet function disorder. So, again, a small brush up. So, these are the list of important platelet function disorder: Bundle-Solier syndrome, Glanzmann thrombasthenia, platelet pool, storage pool disease, Gley platelet syndrome, along with von Willebrand disease. So we can see in every platelet function disorder, the BT is prolonged. So BT is prolonged with every disorder. The platelet count and morphology is usually normal in platelet function disorder, with the exception of Bundle-Solier syndrome, which can present with a thrombocytopenia and giant platelet. And also the Gley platelet syndrome can present with thrombocytopenia with gray-blue vacuolated ghost-like platelet. And if you do an electron microscopy, you can see total lack of alpha granule. Storage pool disease of dense type, in electron microscopy, they can show diminished dense body. So, platelet count and morphology is generally normal except Bundle-Solier syndrome and Gray platelet syndrome, which can present with the thrombocytopenia and different platelet morphology. Clot retraction is prolonged only in case of Glanzmann thrombasthenia, otherwise it is normal in other diseases. And the platelet aggregometry study I already has been discussed. Next is the aqueous type of qualitative platelet disorder. Certain kind of drugs, mainly aspirin and an NSAID group of drugs, can have antiplatelet function, leading to aqueous type of platelet dysfunction. Some systemic disease like uremia, dysproteinemia, liver disease, and some bone marrow, some hematological disease like MPN, MDS, leukemia can also show platelet dysfunction. So these are the list of drug can cause platelet dysfunction. Main is the aspirin and NSAIDs. So aspirin irreversibly inhibits cyclooxygenase enzyme, where NSAIDs reversibly inhibits cyclooxygenase enzyme. So this is the mechanism of antiplatelet drug. So aspirin block the cyclooxygenase formation, leading to deficit in thromboxane A2, leading to defective platelet aggregation and secretion. Other drugs having antiplatelet action as a copridogel, which can block the ADP receptor. Dipyridamole, which increase prostaglandin secretion, thus inhibiting platelet aggregation. So these are the important drugs which can have antiplatelet action and cause platelet dysfunction. So effect of aspirin on platelet function lasts for 7 to 10 days. Aspirin should be withheld for at least 7 days before doing any surgical procedure or platelet function study. Aggregometer meter reveals absence of secondary wave of aggregation and deficit aggregation with collagen. Next is paraproteinemia. Most important is the IgA type of multiple myeloma and macroglobulinemia. These actually coat the platelet surface and inhibit its adhesion and aggregation, and also interfere with the interaction of the coagulation factor, so leading to dysfunctional platelet. Myeloproliferative disorder like CML, polycythemia vera, myelofibrosis, or essential thrombocythemia may present with a bleeding manifestation in the presence of normal or increased platelet count. Variety of platelet function abnormalities has been described. Defective aggregation response to epinephrine is the most common type of abnormality found in MPN. Defective aggregation with ADP and collagen also seen. Other systemic disorder like cirrhosis of liver, SLE, and other hematological malignancy diseases like leukemia, MDS may also cause dysfunctional platelet leading to bleeding manifestation. Sorry. Uremia, mechanism of platelet dysfunction in uremia is unknown. Patient usually present with petechiae, ecchymosis, and GI bleeding. BT is prolonged. Impaired platelet aggregation with ADP and epinephrine is seen. Hemodialysis is the treatment of choice in case of platelet dysfunction in uremia. Cryoprecipitate and desmopressin may be of benefit. Cardiopulmonary bypass. In cardiopulmonary bypass patient, also we can see platelet dysfunction. The platelet may become dysfunctional as the blood circulates through a pump oxygenator during bypass. So the mechanism of dysfunctional protein is activation of the fibrinolysis on the platelet surface with resultant loss of the glycoprotein 1b9, which is the binding site of the von Willebrand disease, leading to platelet deficit in the platelet addition and platelet dysfunction. Platelet transfusion required in case of severe bleeding. Use of antifibrinolytic drug during bypass surgery may reduce the need for transfusion. So to conclude, detailed medical, clinical, and personal history along with screening and specific tests are required to reach in a definitive diagnosis in case of platelet function disorder. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Very nicely done and very detailed. So nice. Very good. Excellent presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Especially the tables, this table which you showed was so good. So very important and very relevant. Excellent presentation, Dr. Sulagna.
Thank you.
We would like to ask you to share the PDF so that we can upload it in the group.
Okay, sir.
Right, and we will get back to you for more classes in future, maybe after the pujas. So please enjoy the puja. Thank you so much. Bye. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.